everyone, welcome back to Monster Maps, and I've got a really good story to tell you tonight that happened to 3 bow hunters in 1981 in the Cascade Mountains. These 3 guys, which one of them I know, and he's the one who told me the story, so this story is true, and he's a friend of mine. I've known him a long time. Used to shoot some archery tournaments together, and I wanted to tell you this story that he told me because it's absolutely fascinating. So you're going to really enjoy this one. Okay, 3 bow hunters. They said in 1981 they were seniors in high school, so they wanted to be able to go on a bow hunt. And he said, "Man, this is going to be the bow hunt of a lifetime for us." He says, we knew that we was graduating. We were going in all different directions across the country, and we wanted to have a really good bow hunt, and it could be the last bow hunt that we got to get together and do an elk hunt like this. So he said we wanted to go hardcore. We wanted to go as hard as we could, and he said we're going to be able to backpack in. He says now where we normally hunted, he said there was always a lot of good elk there, but he says we wanted to go further. He said we usually went in about 4 miles. And he said this time we decided to go in approximately 8 miles. So he said we was going to double it. He said now the terrain was really hard. There's really no way to get back in there unless it's maybe a helicopter, or if you are on horseback or on foot. He said there's no other, you cannot get any type of vehicle back in there at all. He says, so we decided we backpack in. He said we had our bow gear, we had our handguns on our side, and we decided to backpack in. And he says we're hitting the Cascade Mountains, and he says we got back in. It took us, gosh, we left, he said, I believe a little before daylight. And he says we mapped the area out with our topos, and he said we knew where we wanted to go on the course that we wanted to. And he says we got back in there. He says probably about 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon is where they ended up. He says we found some really dark timber overlooking an old dried up lake bed. And he says the water coming from the wood line to the water's edge, he says probably about 50 yards wide. And he says we got up in some dark timber. He said that was about 200 yards from us was the old dried up lake bed. And he says we're up in the dark timber, and he says we're setting up camp. He says we got all our gear, we've set our backpacks down, we're starting to set up our tents and stuff. We're talking about, you know, what kind of elk we're going to see, because it looked like an elk bomb had went off in this area. They were seeing some really awesome sign. And so they decided to go ahead and set their gear up, get everything ready for the night, and in the morning they would start their hunt. So he says about 2 o'clock, 2:30 in the afternoon, they're setting their stuff up, and all of a sudden they look down across the dried up lake bed, and they said they saw a Sasquatch. And he says it came out of the wood line on the other side, and he says about 200 yards, 220 yards from them. And he said it walked across about 50 yards, and said it squatted down right next to the water. He says, man, it scared us, you know. He says, we got our binoculars, you know. We're like, oh my gosh, these things are real, because I don't think any of those had ever seen a Sasquatch. They'd heard stories, but they'd never seen one before. And he says, we're behind the spruce trees up there. He says, we got our binoculars, and we're watching this thing. And now he says, all of a sudden, this thing just starts digging. He says, it's digging in the mud. And they're trying to figure out what he's doing. What is this thing doing? He says, we stood up there for an hour watching this thing dig and dig. He said it'd dig one hole, and then he said it'd reach over and it'd start digging another hole a little bit further down. He says it'd get about 2 or 3 feet apart, you know, each hole was. And he says it's just a digging. He says we can't figure it out. So we're real quiet up there, shaking in our boots. He's like, oh my gosh, you know, they're just blown away. And he said all of a sudden this thing just stood up and turned around and walked back off into the tree line from where it came. And he said after it walked up in the tree line, he said, man, we was worried. He says, well, we waited probably about 30-40 minutes. He says we got our handguns, we got our bows, and we decided to make our way down there to the water line and see what this thing was doing. He says we turned around, we walked down through the water, you know, walked down into the water line there. He says we walked up, and he said, now these tracks are huge. He says they're sinking in the mud and the dirt this deep, and this is dried up dirt. He says we couldn't make a mark. And so anywhere between 18 to 20 feet is what he said that these things were. And he said they had dug 2 or 3 holes and had piled up mussel clams. these mussel shells. And he says this thing was sitting down there that whole time digging, and he said it was cracking these mussels and eating mussels. So basically the thing was eating lunch is what it was doing. As you would want to say, it might be eating a late lunch. But anyway, he said it made those piles, and he said we just couldn't believe it. He said we were nervous. We decided to get out of there. We went back up there to the wood, where the woods were, where we were trying to set up camp. He said we grabbed our tents, we grabbed everything up, put it back in our backpacks as fast as we could, and he said we made a beeline back out to where we used to hunt. And he said we hunted that area instead, and we decided not to ever go back in that far again. He said these things were real. He says he doesn't like to tell a lot of people because they'll think you're crazy. But he told me this story, and it was absolutely fascinating to me, and I wanted to share this thing with y'all this evening. And that is Washington State hunting the Cascades, elk hunting, three teenage bow hunters, and 1981's experience. So I just want to share y'all with that on Monster Maps. So y'all please like and subscribe to this channel. Each week I'm going to try to come in here and I'm going to try to tell the different stories that I've been told over the years from the hunters and from people that I meet constantly. And there's some fascinating stuff. My story with this picture right here and me finding these tracks too has changed everything on the way I think about different things that live out there that we just assume that don't. And that we've been storied to or lied to for a long time. Now there's a lot of people out there that have seen them, and they are believers, and they're knowers as well as I am now. I didn't used to be that way. So y'all watch your six while you're out there, and because I do believe that there's a lot of this missing 411s. A lot of hunters have been missing over the years. I believe a lot of people have been missing in these national forests and stuff, and I do believe that these things are responsible. Now please send me a summary. I would like to, of the story that you have. My email is monstermap411@gmail.com, and that's monstermap411@gmail.com. Please send me a summary of your story. I want the time, the date, or the time and location of where you actually had this encounter, whether it was screams that you heard, rocks being thrown at you from something you couldn't explain, seeing one of them, physically seeing one, or if you find some really weird sign out there. Because I've got there's several stories that are coming in right now that have happened within the last month or so, and then I'm going to be sharing that with y'all here soon. So please subscribe to my channel, and please hit the thumbs up, because that's the only way that this channel is going to survive. It's for y'all to hit the thumbs up so the algorithms and all that kind of stuff will start happening, and they'll start sharing, with other people that are interested in these stories. And this is where we've marked the map. This is where it took place, and I want you to see that on the map here. Right in that area there, they were bow hunting.